Hi, welcome to another episode of Vantage Point by Digi Janus. We're coming to you after a very short break, and I am really excited today because I have on this episode with me Kevin Boezennec. Is that pronunciation correct, Kevin?
Almost like almost, but it's okay. You're
Almost.
doing well.
Okay. I am getting my French pronunciations well. Okay. So, and the reason I'm really excited is because I've had the privilege of working with Kevin on a few projects. I have had the I have taken his inputs in some of the stuff I was doing previously, and he's absolutely an encyclopedia of insights. So Kevin, welcome to the show, and I want you to introduce yourself and tell our audience three things that they wouldn't know about you from your LinkedIn profile.
Sure. Hi, Laksh. Hi, everyone. So, I, I've been practicing design for the past 14 years this year, if I can count well. I started in France, in Paris, where I've been working a lot on from a consulting perspective, joining startup, and arriving in Asia, joining financial institutions. So, I've been actually all along my career learning from all these different industries. And today, I'm managing innovation. So, this is where actually all the best practices converge for me. The top three thing that is not on my LinkedIn, it's primarily around the first one would be how to de-risk a product development using design thinking. That's something that I do not share a lot about, but I use it in my daily work. How to embed design thinking, lean UX, and agile all together. So this is a bit of a cookbook that I can share about. And lastly, is how to work on innovation that deliver value to the organization and the client. So a very pragmatic approach.
Okay, so Kevin, you have given us some really interesting points there around de-risking of product development and deployment. And agile have become these very recent buzzwords, at least in the financial industry. So, and since you have been a practitioner for 14 years, how was work being done in the financial industry before there was design thinking, agile, and let's say innovation? I wouldn't say there was no innovation, but a lack of proper innovation structure into the financial industry. So, could you share your thoughts on that first?
Sure. I think design thinking has been there for a while actually. The why we feel that it's something recent, I think, is because a lot of companies are doing a lot of marketing and buzz and business around their agency or their company driving such workshop or methodologies. But actually, it has been there for quite some time. I still remember one project I used to work on when I was in France in an agency for working for a bank. We used to do UX in pure black and white. And we used to spend a lot of time understanding the problem, understanding the users, design, and get feedback from the client. Then the way we used to prototype is it used to be done in Flash. If you remember Flash, Flash, well, we couldn't even use iPhone with once iPhone went on the market because of the incompatibility with the format. And then once the prototype is validated, it used to go straight to the developers, and then ultimately it's going live a few months down the road. So that was the old waterfall way of working. Then I think the 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 main blocker to adopt a more lean way of working, more agile way of working, is primarily the mindset. I think in our financial institution, the old command and control type of mindset is still around, and therefore uh, it's purely blocking the a quicker way of delivering to get feedback. Sadly, that to me the mindset would be the first one. I think from a technological perspective, financial institutions nowadays are equipped. They're equipped to work in agile. A lot of institutions are working in some sort of agile already.
Okay, now that leads me to some more questions. Then, so first of all, thank you for that answer. Now, I personally worked with the financial industry for a while from a vendor side, of course. And what I have seen is that there is a preference for big bang transformation rather than going into small incremental steps, which is basically a hallmark of being agile, right? So, how can anybody ensure when you are going for such a big bang transformation with waterfall or any other model, right, that what you start, so today we start developing xyz product, right, based on 1 2 3 4 requirements, but it takes you 3 4 years to get there. So how do you ensure what you have developed is still usable for the customer or for the rm or for anybody when it takes you such a long time to develop? So how do you ensure that in the waterfall model?
I mean, it's a great question. I think it really depends on the nature of the product that we are delivering. Because if I take as an example a core banking system, or some of the system where really customer data are, those projects need a lot of control around the delivery of the features, and therefore cannot be agile by nature. However, other type of product, like a mobile application or a platform, definitely should use an agile way of working. Because if there is no feedback from the end user at the early stage, then the risk of failure and the cost wasted are huge, and it's a mistake.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is there is a place for the Big Bang waterfall model, and there is a place for agile as well. So
Absolutely.
absolute. Okay, so what we are going to do is there is a lot of material out there on waterfall and etc. I read it in my engineering, so I'm sure there is a lot more material out there. So let's focus on agile and completely deep dive into that part. Now there is a we have a very wide audience, right? So we have business practitioners, and from the financial industry we have tech, etc. Why don't you walk us through like the journey of going from an idea to a product rollout, and take an actual example while using agile? I would love to go through that example with you.
Sure. And I will actually, in an example, what I would do is to bring how design thinking is used um, at the very early stage to first identify the opportunity and start sizing a bit more where do we want to test. Then I will talk about lean execution, where we build something to get quick feedback. And lastly, agile execution, and how to bridge the both, actually. Because uh, this is where I had a lot of pain in the past working in product teams, right? So as an example, as a project example, if we look about a new target segment, you know that today, and I will talk for private banking for as an example. Today, the relationship with the clients is only with the parents, but we can foresee that, and we see external studies showing that the next generation clients will not stick with the banks, but they will rather go into uh, this new crypto firm, or they will diversify their investment into this Web3 type of firm. And we can see it happening around right now. However, how the bank can still keep the relationship. So, as an example, design thinking can be used at the very early stage to identify what are the pain points today, what's working well, not working well, what are the opportunities, and start mapping journeys about the engagement, awareness. How do we engage this segment? How what is the relationship, and therefore how the loyalty can be built. So target journey, user journey mapping, and mapping all the touch points, I think, is critical, and this is where design thinking workshops are very useful. Size the opportunity. This is where we can bring some business model canvas in order to have a better clarity about, well, how do we want to engage this segment, and this is all about generating hypothesis, and it's a safe space to do it, because it's design thinking, right? And it doesn't take a lot of time. And so generating business hypothesis, how do we engage this community, and how do we want to test it out? Then moving on, the prototyping. Design thinking enable anyone, actually, because nowadays the tools are so easy to use, to prototype one hypothesis and get feedback, and therefore get feedback internally, externally. And then as a result, if the prototype is successful, then moving on the pilot. Pilot means testing at scale with a lightweight technology. So For example, we use a progressive web app with a very light way of testing mobile applications. This is backed up by analytics tools in order to track the behavior online. And this is the lean execution behavior online from the target users adopting this mobile application, capturing their feedback online as well. And so having one-on-one interviews down the line in order to really understand, is this a success or not? How do we assess that this pilot is successful? It's by monitoring the success metrics that has been decided during the design thinking workshop uh, when defining the scope of the proof of concept. Then we get feedback. So traditionally, we do 3 months, 90 days to capture feedback during the pilot. And then moving on the agile execution, this is where what we use is the dual track roadmap. Dual track roadmap is actually the best way I found to embed, well, product design and agile. So this transition from proof of concept pilot to a full scale execution. Why is that? Is because we have one track of design, and the second track is the build. And so this is where incrementally the team is building more and more journeys going through the platform, but we continuously capture the feedback, and then we go back to the design, the drawing board, and this is where we take decision upon, well, we need to change a feature or not. How do we do that? We use the user story mapping, and this is how we prioritize the backlog for the next sprint. And we do it continuously. It's an ongoing process up to a point where we are scaling, and so there where we have less fundamental incremental changes, but then we have a mature agile delivery team.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. And the reason I was smiling while you were speaking is because this reminded me when we collaborated. So for me and Kevin had an opportunity to work together, or rather, I should say, I had a privilege of working with him. So we were trying to get social messaging working for RMs, and Kevin, in his role, was very helpful, and where we got a POC going. And I'll tell you, there was something very amazing that happened. And so all the time when we asked RMs and traders, etc., they were like, we want social messaging, we want social messaging. So what we enabled for them was exactly that, only social messaging. But as soon as we went into a pilot or a POC, or POV, whatever you call it, and I remember Kevin calling me and saying, hey Laksh, there is no way of sending attachments. I'm like, yeah, because you guys wanted social messaging, right? So messaging works. He's like, no, the RM wants to send files, to receive files, and stuff. And that, for as simple as it sounds, that is a very complex problem to solve. So but we got that feedback so early in our journey because of the whole design and agile thinking, and of course the great inputs from the team, that we could incorporate that as a part of the development framework, and we could roll it out very, very successfully, and it was an award winning proposition. And a lot of regional and global banks then accepted it and rolled it out. So uh, when Kevin says that, and that is where my previous question was from, that how do you maintain the coherence between what the customer needed at start versus what you deliver? So that
Hmm.
because the vision for the customer changes, the need of the customer changes, and this being a very, very good example that you shared, the next gen customer. So their needs are so ever changing, so fast, the kind of products they want, etc. So absolutely, thank you for sharing that example with me. Now, Kevin, I am just wondering, uh, is is design thinking, I'm trying to frame this so that I don't offend any of the financial industry people that we have on the call, is design thinking, agile, etc., really implemented, or this is just another buzzword that banks are using to show that they are in line and in touch with the realities today? So yeah.
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think if looking at the buzzwords that we can see around, and I'm sure it's relevant for other industries as well, design thinking, innovation, agile, and in the past few years, I've seen a lot of these words coming from the top management and executed the so short answer, is it truly executed or is it a buzzword? A mix of the both. No direct answer. I think that it's always easier to pivot a boat um, when it's a small boat. So it means a startup, a different type of small company. Very easy to implement and execute agile, design thinking, innovation. A large financial institution is always very hard. So the danger it's when it's only a cosmetic word and there is no follow-up because it has to be done end to end. Working, doing stand-up and having squads where the mindset is waterfall is not agile. It's a cosmetic way of working, but it's the same for design thinking and UX, right? Um, it looks good to have teams working that way, but then it's very hard. And I'm not blaming anyone, right? It's the culture change, it's the transformation of the organization, the way that projects are prioritized until execution and being dynamic in the way to shuffle the backlog. It goes end to end from financing the project until having a team being able to execute. So that's a lot of buzzword for sure, 100%, but it's part of the cultural transformation, and this is where it takes a lot of time to
No,
execute.
absolutely. I think the key takeaway that I got from that is when the organization is as large size as some of the private banks out there, it takes a while to get the whole ship going in the agile, and uh, and I personally experienced this that before it becomes agile, it is a Frankenstein. So, sorry for the lack of a better word. So it is a Frankenstein between agile and waterfall. So you could see people saying the right buzzwords, but thinking in waterfall. It is almost like learning a new language. So I am Indian, and so I used to think in Hindi and speak in English, which is a very challenging thing to do. So you have to somehow find a way to think and speak the same language.
Hmm.
So I think that I have seen a few examples where people think in waterfall but they speak in agile, and that is a very challenging environment to be. Now you have given me some more topics to dive into, UX, and I am sure half the industry still confuses it with UI. So I want to deep dive into this. Then but before we go into that, I want to ask you one last question around this whole agile and design thinking. See, what I am a big fan of this design thinking. I follow IDEO, and I took a course from them. I try to implement into even the stuff that I do, storytelling and with Digi Janus, etc. However, what I have been noticing now is that this has taken a leap forward. Now industries are talking about, when they are talking about design thinking, or so they are talking about future casting, they are talking about context map, trend map, etc. And that is what they're talking about now, Kevin. Do you really think, or rather, let me rephrase this question, because I don't want a very contentious question. How could the financial industry keep up with such a fast paced environment where now people are mapping trends and then taking design thinking into context, etc., and we are still talking about whether we are agile, we are not agile, whether the design thinking is truly design thinking or not. So how can the financial industry keep up with the fast pace with which design thinking is moving?
I mean, before answering, this is only my opinion because you will have somebody else, they will have a different perspective. It's like a chef, right? The recipes, this is my own recipe. And therefore, as you mentioned, right, design thinking with IDEO have been around for a very long time. I think there is one of my favorite book is Tim Brown, right? Change by Design, and
Yes.
it's already he's talking about design thinking, and this is what 20 years, more than 20 years ago now. So that's something that in the financial industries, how do we keep up, right? I think the way to keep up is to experiment, because if you look at the talking about strategy for design thinking, right? The the strategic focus will always be here, right? The core business, and therefore trying to implement agile design thinking in the delivery cycle takes time. But I think organization needs to keep strategic agility. So to have small cycle, small project to test it out and assess the value. And this is where the lean process is kicking out. If we keep talking about design thinking, we keep teaching employees to do design thinking. It's fantastic from an awareness perspective. But are they bringing design thinking into their daily job? And this is where is the danger or the opportunity, I would say. Opportunity to actually how to ensure design thinking is implemented within the organization, coach the employees. That's critical to me. Help them. I think there is a Japanese method called the Shu Hari. Uh, I'm surely pronouncing it very well, very badly. But first is about teaching. Number two, it's about the second level being available, hold handing the person. And number three is well being there when they need you. And so that's to me the best way to truly execute design thinking into the organization. Teaching, but help coaching.
Right. No, that is a wonderful answer. And for those who don't know what Kevin is talking about when he says the Tim Brown book, go and search IDEO shopping cart example. So there is a video out there. It is an amazing video. I think 15-20 minutes. You have to watch it. I watched it. And it is an amazing example of how you can think differently. Now when it comes to thinking differently and innovating, I know you are leading some innovation efforts as well, and this is what gets me really excited because whenever I have a guest from the financial industry, actually we have all guests from financial industry, so I am always this excited about this innovation question because regulation from their very nature are meant to be to minimize disruption, if I may call it that, because if you look at liquidity requirements or the other type of regulations, they're aimed to minimize disruption and standardize things, whereas innovation is the exact opposite. It is meant to move fast, break fast. Design thinking is the same, agile is the same, the move fast, break fast, learn, and so how challenging is it to innovate in a regulated environment?
No, I mean, great question. From my opinion, what is the overlap between regulation and design thinking is they are both, well, user-centric, client-centric. Regulation are here to protect the clients, and design thinking is here to, to answer their needs as one of the three pillars of design thinking, desirability. So, so yes, it is challenging in a way that we have to ensure that we protect uh, over talking about data, right? We cannot use real data when we are prototyping, and therefore we have to use mock data. So this is the from a pilot technological setup. This is where is the limit, but it creates also a lot of opportunities, right? Because once again, and I'm a very optimistic person, so when we have a lot of constraints, this is where I see opportunities. When we talk about innovation, and I will take a step back from a program perspective, I will divide innovation into two main parts. First one is ignite new growth, new business model. And the second part that I would look at is protect the core business, process efficiency. Let's look at process efficiency for this question. Process efficiency and in parallel of regulatory constraints. Well, what if we look at some of the current processes and where we can improve them so that we protect the bank from regulatory breaches? To me, that's an opportunity to look at that. So opportunity and challenge, yes, is challenging. The engaging the next gen, we have to follow the rules. That's the way it is, and the way we pilot, we have to ensure we are not touching and using anything confidential. That's the context.
No, absolutely. And if I give you my personal opinion, I think it is not a level playing field where when you see a bank or private bank which has existed for hundreds of years, when they have to innovate versus a fintech trying to innovate in a sandbox environment. I think the odds are highly in favor of the fintech. Of course, they have their own challenges, etc. But from a regulatory perspective, it is not a level playing field. Fintechs have a huge advantage. They can go agile day one. They don't have the same regulatory reporting requirements because they're sandboxed. And of course that encourages innovation. But when I see these comparisons being drawn by, when fintechs say we can do this in 6 clicks, this bank will do it in 15 clicks, you are not on the same level playing field. So I think those comparisons are pretty unfair, or unrealistic, because you are playing on an level playing field. Now, so you mentioned that innovation can be looked at in two sides of things. One is the
Mhm.
business model, and one is the process efficiency, etc. That we pick up. Now, business model, I want to go deep into that, so I will come back to that later. Now, when you're looking at the process efficiency, etc., and the wish list from, let's say, your stakeholders, there has to be a long wish list. And we work together. I remember that excel sheet that we had for bots, and I think there were not less than 45, 50 ideas there, that how we could do bots together, and which I would say is a step towards innovation. Kevin, budgets, you could be like a $1 trillion asset manager, private bank, etc. Budgets will always be a challenge. So how do you go ahead and choose which innovative projects to go for? Do you go by the innovativeness? Do you go by the impact? Do you go, is there a role of the stakeholders that are involved? So I would love to get your opinion out there, that how do you choose these projects out of the long list?
I would say all of the above. So what it means that how do I identify valuable project to work on? And this is by nature dynamic, because every other week or quarter we have new project coming through the door of innovation. Well, we use a matrix to prioritize the project: impact to the bank, impact to the customer, return on investment. Do we have any dependencies? So this is how we prioritize really the project, and we select the one that we want to drive. So the key differentiation between innovation and business as usual per se would be to experiment on high risk, high perceived value project, because if they are if the value is not perceived, there's no point working for either BAU or innovation on those projects. But how do we test? That's the question. When you are working in a BAU type of environment, then you really have very limited time and luxury to test key client journey, key experimentation for a new technology, and this is how innovation is really embedded within the bank core product, and help actually them to breathe. And then I will keep the two lenses of ignite new growth and protect the core business. These really are the two lenses that we need to keep, because it talks to the stakeholders, right? When we talk about igniting new growth, looking at a segment with underserved today, opportunities for the future, partnership, and protecting the core is, well, that's our mandate, right? We need to ensure that the core is protected, but process efficiency, reduce the cost. So we use metrics data, in short, actually, to first identify the project, and we map um, the experimentation, so value. For example, if today one process takes 3 hours to be performed, then the purpose of a proof of concept would be to get rid of these 3 hours, and move from 3 hours to 5 minutes, as an example, and process efficiency. And therefore, this is where we look at the benefits of the experimentation, the investment, and the expected returns.
Yeah. No, that is amazing. That So anybody listening out there, build out a matrix. Reach out to Kevin.
Mm,
He will absolutely. I have seen the outcome of this. I have never gone through the process personally. I've seen the outcome because we did some bots, and so so that is an amazing process. Reach out to Kevin. He will. I'm sure he will be kind enough to guide you guys. Now,
sure.
Kevin, coming to my favorite part of this episode. This has, by the way, become an episode where I am giving you multiple choice answers and you are selecting out of that. So this is one of those episodes now, but I will change it now so that we get more insights from you rather than you getting to choose options. Now, the one part that I want to talk about is UX and UI. There is
Mhm.
so much talk about it. There is talk about how big tech is doing well, how traditional financials are not doing well, etc. But before we get there, out on a very friendly note, how many times are you are in a meeting where UX and UI get uh, confused as same?
No, I mean, now less, to be frank, now less, because I think the stakeholders are educated, they are aware of the difference between the both. But in my career, a lot, and I saw the change, right? Once again, when I started my career in France, a UX designer works in black and white, and they are really focusing on understanding the user's mindset, empathizing with the target audience, the typical UX work, right? Persona, user journey mapping, sitemap, and field inquiry. So this was really the job where I started my career. But over time, actually, what happened is the tools changed so much. I still remember working for a client who asked for a change on the wireframe, so these black and white screens, and it used to, I mean, to take me hours to just update layer by layer. It was not automated. Nowadays, you with all these style guide components at the UI level, you change one button, you change it once, and all the instances are updated automatically. So what it means for the job of UX and UI, now you can prototype in color, and this is why on the market nowadays we have more and more product designers. And I'm taking shortcut here because I won't go too far deep into UX UI for the audience, but I think nowadays the product designer is able to do UX and UI at the same time. And where's the value, and what are the risks of that? Well, the value is to get more valuable feedback early in the funnel, because if we already use components from the existing product, then we get feedback early. The risk is because we have maybe less and less expert into UI design, then we tend to see a lot of super application website looking more or less the same. So I face a lot. Oh, you are the designers. Yeah, you do look and feel, do cosmetic. I had to really bring myself to the business conversation in order to get away from this cliche. And this is why I also went to INSEAD to get better equipped in terms of business knowledges and management, is to bring design to a business conversation and the value of design. I think McKinsey released a report about the business value of design. Nowadays, you see a lot of business design job coming from these agencies in the street. It's real. Now, there is a real business impact of design in the organizations. It's not so much anymore about UX UI. You still face people who say, oh, the designers is doing UI. It's education.
No, no, absolutely. And I have had this experience myself that it is absolutely getting better. A few years ago, you would walk into a meeting where you would say, let's have a discussion around UX. And they're like, yes, our color is, red, green, blue, etc. So, and you were speechless, where like, how do you explain? Because the gap is such huge. But I'm
Mhm.
also must compliment and, give credit where it is due that in the last couple of years, I have seen a lot of senior execs understand the difference between user journey and user interface and
Mm.
how one is enabling the other. So I think it is amazing when the leap that the industry has taken in last 2 or 3 years, and I think because of the digital transformation that is happening now. When we talk about last 2 or 3 years, it is very hard to not talk about the fintechs that have taken the world by storm, and the one that I want to focus on is Robinhood. So we know the popularity of the app, how it is Gen Z, Gen X, next gen, everybody is like really a big fan of it. But there was a behavioral study done on Robinhood, and I want to, and this is a very very big news, so I am referring to the news right now. So there was a lot of scrutiny by behavioral researchers on the Robinhood app, and what they argue is that the platform, because of its great UX and UI, incentivizes risky behavior. So we are talking. So look at the leap we are taking. So
Mm.
there is a time when people were confusing UX and UI as color and branding. And now we are saying that there is an app out there whose UX and offerings are so good that they are potentially encouraging people to make riskier trades than they should. What has happened here, Kevin? One is UX and UI capable of doing something like that? Let's just call it as
Hmm.
user experience. Is this something that a good user experience can do? Two, now if you have a moral obligation, how do you decide there is a good UX and UI? So, two questions uh,
Hmm.
before we move ahead.
Now, this is worrying me, right? It's worrying me because it means that that's the risk when organizations only focus on UI, UI design, or cosmetic. Let's just talk about cosmetic look and feel. Does it look and feel good? Yes. A good UX, per definition, is looking at the target audience, well, needs and pain points, right? So is really solving the look and feel aspect of an investment platform what really help the target audience to invest in? This is a mistake. Like this should be avoided by really looking at what the target audience wants when they use an investment platform, like a trading platform. The risk should be controlled. Like this is critical from an investor. See, this is where we shift the mindset. We empathize not with a user looking at an interface. We empathize with an investor. And in what it means to empathize with an investor is to understand the risk appetite, to understand holistically how do they invest. Is investing into equity the only asset that they are investing in? At which stage or their investment journey they are they at the early stage when they are growing the wealth, they want to uh, maintain the wealth, or looking at the future? Those mindsets are really critical to the good UX, because once again, this is a very good example of, well, risk of investing into designers looking only at the cosmetic aspect of a product, and this is the result. I still remember, I think it was booking.com. uh, it's a research report around the cost of, they changed the button, I think, and the label of the main call to action, and therefore it was less visible for the customers, and they lost a lot of money just because this button update. And once you mentioned as well for Robinhood, this example, well, to me it's critical and worrying. I think how do we define a good UX? Well, this is, we go back to the first level. It has to be end to end. We have to empathize with the target audience. Uh, This highly likely have been designed into a room with very creative people only looking at the UX. We have to make it easy to perform a trade, and that's a mistake. We need to look at the end-to-end customer journey, understand uh, top three needs. What is the job to be done? And that's a framework that I'm using, uh, from a functional perspective, emotional perspective, um, and it has to be looked from end to end touch point within the stage of the investment, as well as how to support this investment.
Yep. No, Kevin, that is really insightful. And actually, if I want to have a little bit of a discussion here because this is a very insightful topic. You are, I think the UI part was very big focus as compared to the UX part, and even for a fintech. But what I also think is, and this is where I want to get your thoughts again, is that when they initially started, they were targeting investors. However, when COVID hit, there was a new persona of people that came in, and that was the gamblers. Because gambling is really big in the US, right? So there you can gamble on any
Or
kind of
in
games
Asia as well.
in Asia as well. Yes. So, but it is pretty institutionalized in US. Basically, you can gamble on a lot of things. In Singapore, there is gambling, but it is a pretty regulated and moderated industry.
Hmm.
So I think a new persona of customers came in, which was the gamblers. And this is my personal opinion. Please, nobody take this. This is not targeted towards anybody, but this is what I feel, that a new persona of customers came in, which was the gamblers. Then, somewhere between this pandemic, there was another persona that came in, which was the revolutionary thought process guys, where they said, this is our opportunity to go against the big guys on Wall Street. And somehow I feel that the investor persona versus the gambler versus this guy who's carrying the baton of taking it up or sticking it up to the big guy is very different. Do you think that, one, is that a valid premise? Two, did Robinhood miss the core persona that it was catering to at this during these different times? And three, how could they actually get, like, how could have they done things differently here if the first two are true?
I mean, those are very good questions. And actually, it made me think that Robinhood can afford to make this mistake. And this is where the banks, the role of the old fashioned incumbents is. We cannot afford to do that as financial institutions. We have to ensure that we protect our clients. First observation is fintech, yes, go fast, fail fast, but still they don't understand truly the investor mindset. Then to your question, so how could they have avoided that, right? I think to bring back design thinking, lean execution, and agile execution, I think what they miss here is this dynamism from understanding the users and go back to the drawing board, what I called the dual track. The first track is about user experience, the second track is delivery. Those should have been insights to go back to the product team and update the platform. So that's the feeling. I haven't used the platform for a while, so I also I don't want to blame them too much.
Yeah, and absolutely no. So there is no blaming here, So if anybody from Robinhood is hearing, see, we are absolutely in awe of what you have created. So there is no blaming. In fact, there are so many people who are trying to copy what you are doing in Asia, and maybe successfully, unsuccessfully. But and I think imitation is the biggest form of flattery. So absolutely, you've done a great job. That is the reason you are being brought up into so many discussions. But I do feel that even for a fintech, being agile is a challenge, being innovative is a challenge, because your target personas can change. And this could be the same person who was an investor before, and now they are taking a gambler's persona, or somebody who's looking at this as a revolution against the Wall Street. So I think that also explains why agile innovation in the financial industry is such a big challenge, even for fintech. So the really, really insightful part of discussion that we had there, Kevin. So thank you so much for being so candid. But we do have a lot of other things we want to ask you now. Now, I will ask you on a couple of other questions on UX UI side, and then we have to go into the business design part, because that is really interesting. Uh, from what I have heard from the rumor mills, NPS score for banks have never been worse. So there is no need to confirm or deny that part. We'll keep that separate. But what I am thinking is, have the banks become really bad at doing journeys and experiences, or have big techs with their freemium free offerings and offering great journey experiences changed this? And what could the banks do differently from here?
Uh, Look, yeah, very good question. You mentioned, are the bank doing wrong customer journey? Are they doing customer journey in the first place? I think this is the first question I have. So in design thinking, there is this method that we call the 5 whys. Then you ask 5 times why to really understand the root of the problem. And I would really challenge that. It's a fantastic insight, right? Like you start working uh, from this point where banks have a bad NPS. Why? Why do they have a bad NPS? Is it COVID who is bringing this negative mood? What type of banks? So some customer. This is where the understanding the customers is exciting, because you capture insights on why they are grumpy, why they're unhappy, why they are detracting the bank. Maybe they just want their voice to be heard. It happens. They just want their voice to be heard, and therefore this is where design thinking, client experience are very important for banks, is to capture, analyze, and translate that. are they really unhappy, or do they just want to throw a message to the organization? This channel has to be open for all banks, right? So that's one point. Then, I mean, you're right. Fintechs industry are doing a fantastic job, right? It's hard to compete by definition from various angles. I think technology-wise, it's always easier for a fintech to have the latest stack of technology uh, and do a fantastic product. For a bank with legacy system is more challenging. Then talking about the skill sets, right? People, process, and platform, right? From a people perspective, nowadays I think there is a lot of attrition where a lot of the tech talent are going to these fintechs. So therefore, well, they are doing a better job than the banks as a result. And then processes, then as you mentioned earlier, we have regulatory mandate. So therefore, pushing new product, onboarding new partners is a challenge. This fintech industry don't have this showstopper. So they will always be faster than the banks.
Right.
As a result, bad NPS. That may be a reason why.
Yeah, and I think so, Kevin. To be fair to banks and larger financial institutions, there is a new breed of customers who have no experience of using products which are not AI, machine learning, or big tech based. Like if you go into Gmail today and you put in a keyword, you are searching hundreds of thousands of emails, and you see your results in point zero zero some seconds, right? That is an amazing piece of technology at work. I don't know if you are old enough, but I know from my side that it used to take a while to even search through a very small stack of the documents, on some research server, etc. And exporting them used to be another nightmare. You had to put it over. So I have not experienced this. I'm relatively younger, guys. So but I know from a lot of people's observation that they used to submit an export request at night, and it would be available next morning with all the records, etc. So there is a whole generation that has not experienced that.
Mm,
you know and so when they come in and they are looking for a statement, or they are looking for transactions for the last 1 year, they are frustrated that when Google or Gmail can offer us in depth for free, how are the banks not offering it? And I think
mhm.
that is also a big driver of NPS scores, and the frustration, general frustration with any kind of legacy uh, offering that they have not kept up. Okay.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
so now we come to the most interesting part, because this is a part which I have also not heard a lot about before. And I told Kevin we are going to do this as a specific special part, and he did give you some hints. So let's get right into this now. Business design, as you mentioned, is a concept which is very poorly understood, or very less understood right now when it comes to the industry. So, first of all, take the floor and tell us, what is business design all about?
Sure. Uh, I'm just taking a quick introduction of why it matters to me, and how this topic came to my interest. Now, as I was just sharing earlier, that I've been doing design from being very hands-on UX in black and white to a product designer who manage both UI, UX, and delivery. So I've across my career understood more and more technology and business. And I think in the past 5 years, my focus has been more and more on business, where I went to a business school. And therefore, today, to me, innovation is actually the convergence from all this learning in the past. And today, business design is a reality. And so what it means, as you mentioned earlier, design thinking, you have desirability, you have viability, and you have feasibility. And in the middle of these three categories, this is where you have innovation. The business designers has a particular appetite for the viability, right? of a new product, a new business model, as we mentioned earlier, without discounting the rest. Quite important. And therefore, the business designer is using the framework and the mindset of a designer with the tools of business. So I think earlier I mentioned about the business model canvas. We have a few blue ocean strategy come from the school I went as well. And it's very close to an entrepreneur mindset. So this is why today I'm very passionate about business design, because I strongly believe that this brings value to the organization. And I take my profile as an example. I hope it's a good example, but from,
It is.
from
It
the
is absolutely.
perspective, I have the understanding of being user-centric, understanding the needs, the pain point of a target audience, no matter what is the target audience from a bank or other industries. And I understand technology delivery. Design thinking gives me the tools to test and experiment at small scale what we intend to do. From a business perspective, it's efficient, it's cost efficient. Low investment of time, low investment of tools, quick feedback, fail fast is cost efficient. If we move on the next stage, well, then we are also investing a bit more, but we have more value delivered out of it. So to me, at this point of time in my career, business design is key. And I think what we will see in some times is truly who is adopting a business design mindset and who is not. And we will see actually, I think it will be natural to see that product delivered with low value versus product delivered with high value added from a business perspective and customer perspective. And this is, of course, we take decision based on data. It's at the heart of taking a business decision, and qualitative, quantitative data are embedded into the business design mindset.
Absolutely. And I think, Kevin, what you mentioned this, there has been parts and parcel of this done, for a very long time. So, like the business model canvas, the book you're talking about, that is I read that book in 2010 when I was working with Thomson Reuters. They wanted to do a new business model, but even with that, it was not as structured as what you're talking about right now. Anybody who's listening, it is a beautiful book. Please don't buy it an e-copy. Please buy a physical copy of it, because it is a beautifully designed book. It tells you how to go ahead and do the business. And Blue Ocean Strategy as a book
Mm,
needs no introduction. So I think these concepts have existed for a while, and now what is amazing is the kind of structure, kind of data insights, etc., and how they're using data insights, etc., and they are bringing, and practitioners like you are bringing this into the financial industry. And if you ask me, the wealth management industry needs it big time. You have next
mm,
gen that is disrupting. They want to go to big tech and other kind of providers, so you really need a different kind of a business model for them. There are EAMs, family offices, that are growing pretty significantly. And I will not say the industry is left behind. I think the industry is doing pretty okay when it comes to this. Now, what I do want to ask you here is, because this is not from the BAU and not protecting the core, how are you going to go into an organization and get approvals for something which is a different business model? Now, let's say today, a lot of revenue is driven by transactions. Let's just assume that. Now you go with a different business model which says, we should be charging an advisory fee rather than this, or we should be going for X, a different business model altogether. How would you make a case? How would you show the results? Because these things can take time. How do you get the senior management to back something so radically different? So that,
mm. A great question. Uh, I think business design is really useful for both protect the core and ignite new growth. Talking about cost reduction, automation, and revisiting existing business model actually. But well, that's a different topic. But I think business design really serve the entire spectrum of project a bank can work on. How to pitch to senior management data, data forecast, about about a new business model, engage a new target audience. How do we generate revenue? What investment is needed? The power of partnership. It's something that is part of a business design. What's the value for the partner? What's the value for the bank? What's the value for the clients? And well, we test it out. That's the value of having design thinking and business design. It is not we don't stay here within the canvas and map data on how do we forecast this to happen based upon the volume. We test it out. We get well data out of this test, and then we pivot or we change direction. But we can feel pretty quickly how is performing the business model that we are transforming. So data is key. I just want to give a bit more maybe granularity around this particular aspect. When we talk about protecting the core and process efficiency, mapping the before after journey is key. I think I mentioned earlier, mapping the journey end to end from a user perspective, but also vertically. What are the workforce employed behind the scene to support a customer journey? What are the platform? What is the cost incurred here into this journey to support this end-to-end transaction journey, as you mentioned earlier? And then we can map hypotheses here and focus on what truly matters.
No, that is actually the reason you see me introspecting, and I know you were seeing this, but the audience doesn't because the focus was on you. So the reason I was introspecting is because this seems like it will be very critical as we move forward in differentiating the winners from losers in any kind of industry, right? So what are your thoughts on that? Or am I just too fascinated with the concept of this business design? And please.
I believe so. I believe so that the winners will adopt an agile mindset and a business design mindset to stay ahead of the curve and truly streamline the investment related to the digital deliveries versus those who won't and will continue doing what they are doing in a surviving mode, trying to deliver more features on their digital project. But actually, this is valuable end to end, right? Offline and online at the client experience level. Those who don't look at that will fail.
Okay. And we have had a really amazing conversation with you. Kevin, I must tell you, this is our longest episode, and we have had an episode with three people. So, uh,
I talk
this
too
is
much, right?
no, it is an amazing conversation. So, I think both of us had pretty common ideas, and we discussed a lot of things. Now, before I let you go, I have two questions for you. And so, one is, uh, you are so close to innovation in the financial industry. So what is one thing that you would like to change about how innovation is done in the financial industry today? That is my first question to you. Once you answer that, then I will ask you the second question.
Okay, it's a great question. I think more support for innovation, more investment for innovation, uh, more focus. The I have the feeling the industry is investing in innovation because we need to do it. We need to have innovation. MAS is strongly supporting innovation as well, and this is fantastic. It's the right approach. How can innovation truly brings value back to the business? It's really what I would expect more from the financial institutions. More focus on innovation, not as a separate entity, but as part of the core business. And yeah, more support, I think.
Yeah, okay. So more support for innovation. And I agree with you. MAS is absolutely the flag bearer of how you should use grants
Mm.
and promote innovation. I've been such a big fan. So I wrote an article recently, when the RBI opened their own fintech unit, Reserve Bank of India, they opened their own fintech unit. And I said, please look at how MAS is using grants because they are doing an amazing job at it. Now, my second question to you is, and with this we will end the episode, is if there was one thing that you could erase or ask the industry to forget today, what would that be? And we will put some pensive and music behind when you are introspecting. So uh,
Yeah, I'm really thinking because forgetting, um, there is value of understanding the mistake from the past. This is how we get better as organizations. Forget. I think it's a great question because when we look at um, changing way of working, we need to forget about the old way, relearn, talk about relearning new way of working. So it's about forgetting uh, the old the old way of working, but without forgetting the mistake. I think it's very important to keep the mistake in a backlog where we identify we failed here, why we failed, and deep dive deeper into the those events. I think forgetting the bad habits.
okay, so forgetting the old ways of working while still remembering the lessons that those taught us
Oh,
is one thing.
sorry, maybe forgetting the bad habits related to the old way of working.
Okay, done. And still remembering the lessons. So
Exactly.
exactly. So we are. I ask this question to everyone these days. What is one thing that you would expect everybody to unlearn now? So
Hmm.
thank you so much, Kevin. You have been a wonderful guest, and it has been always amazing partnering with you. And I think your friendly persona came out really well on this episode. So thank you so much for making time. And I thank everyone for joining us for another episode of Vantage Point by Digi Janus. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.